This is my exact daily routine from when I grew my landing page agency from 0 to 900K per month in less than 1 year, and it's completely broken down hour by hour throughout the day. And I hope that you can use what you see in this video to become 10 times more productive yourself, as there are 4 or 5 very big lessons in here that I think you'll be able to apply right away. So let's get into the start. So my life. During this period, I worked about 12 hours per day, 6 days per week, and this isn't really a video for people who want to work as little as possible. If you think things throughout this, like I could never do that, don't worry, everyone knows you couldn't. This video is not for you. It's not for people who, don't want to absolutely go for it. But that being said, this business never once stopped me from doing anything that I wanted to do outside of work, such as vacations, hobbies, friends, family, exercising, training. I like to go off-roading and play softball and stuff like that. So I did not miss a single thing that I wanted to do during the entire 11 to 12 month span that this video covers. And if I wanted to do something, I simply did it. And that really is all there is to it. So my business during this time was I had a marketing agency that provided landing pages and CRO services to e-commerce brands doing $1 million per year or more in revenue. So people who have a Shopify store selling X, Y, and Z, pretty much anybody is going to be a decent client of mine in that case, but I only did this for Shopify store owners. There's more than just Shopify in terms of e-commerce, but the CRO specifically, I only did it for Shopify stores because all of my systems, all of my knowledge, all of my X, Y, and Z was all tailored around that. Our business model was to get people in the door with one landing page for $2,500 or 3 for $5,000. And if we did a good job and got them a great result, we would try to upsell them to 8 to 15K per month CRO services. And if you don't know, CRO stands for conversion rate optimization. So if they have their homepage, for example, and you make a second version of the homepage and you split the traffic and yours does better, it gets a 20% higher conversion rate, you made them 20% more money on their homepage traffic, which is going to be the majority of their traffic in some cases. And that's basically the value of the service. And this was the basis of our entire business. So my funnel and the 1000x leads marketing funnel I talk about in these videos is the basis of what I was doing back then, but I've improved it a little bit since then because there was stuff that I didn't know. There's stuff that could have been done better and all of that kind of, everything like that. You learn and improve over time. So I had about 90% of this stuff in the previous business, and it was all focused around landing pages for e-commerce as well as conversion rate optimization for e-commerce. So I only sold the 2 services. I was in no mean full stack or anything like that. 2 services to one type of customer doing over $1 million per year, and that's it. And to be honest, I didn't really get any customers doing over $60 million a year, which there are plenty of e-commerce stores doing that. But if they, were at that level, there was probably bigger agencies than me to handle those, or they would have done it in-house. As I go through this, it's very important to realize that no one gets to 8 figures on their own. You actually have to hire people, obviously, who take care of things for you, and no one gets to 8 figures all at once. So my schedule when I was first starting was obviously different than this, when I was scaling. But from the time I was about 80K per month in revenue all the way to 900K per month, this was really my schedule with not too much variation. So you need others to do a lot of tasks on here. There's certain tasks that you're going to see in this video that, have to be done and obviously have to be done, like client work and management, but they're not on my calendar. They're not in this video. And that's obviously because I hired and paid employees to do these things for me to free up my time. And it kind of annoys me that I would have to say that and point that out in the video, but I really wanted to because of all of the dumb questions I get in the DMs and email. I couldn't do this. I have to do work. I'm we'll just move on. So things such as doing client work, managing clients, sales to a large degree, hiring, recruiting, training, operations. These are all stuff that I did not do primarily for my business. We had 76 people at the peak, 60 overseas and 16 from the United States and Canada, and they did all of this stuff. I, set them up originally. I hired a good recruiter actually in Pakistan and a good recruiter in the Philippines, and I had my stateside employees, and we made it work. That's how it is. So the first part of making the schedule and the first part to understand for this video is how I decided what to do. And one of the biggest drivers for me personally, just in business/life, is the 3 times 90% rule. So I read this originally in a book written by Brian Tracy. I'm not sure which book, but I know a few of them frequently mention this. So this rule, if you want to call it that, states that no matter what business you're in or what you do, 90% of the results will be driven by just 3 types of things. And I've tested this many times over the years, and I view it to be 100% accurate. So this is very important background information for the rest of the video. When I'm talking about the 3 times 90% philosophy, that sounds good, right? But what are these 3 things? What are the 3 things that you as the viewer could be doing to get 90% of the result and basically scrapping the rest? You could think of these as the 3 highest leverage activities you could do, and it's very important to correctly identify these. And it's easier than one might think to incorrectly identify them and misattribute the success of your company to something that seems like it's very important, but in reality it's just correlated or downstream from the actual important tasks. This is the best principle in the world, I think, when you get it right. But if you have 3 things and you get 1 or more of them wrong, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time, and it's probably going to end up worse for you than not applying this rule to begin with. So what do I mean specifically by this? If you might think that one of the top 3 most important activities in a business is sales, but sales, of course we have to do get good at sales, get a good process going, but that's really downstream from lead generation. A lot of people think they have a sales problem, but they have a leads problem. If you're not generating enough leads, you're not going to have any sales calls to go to. So that's what I mean when, it's easier than one might think to misattribute the success and, by extension, misattribute or incorrectly identify one of the 3 things. So we need to find the 3 things and then minimize the rest. So for me, working on the ad funnel, as that's how I got the most clients, working on improving and responding cold emails that I was sending to potential clients as well as partners, that's also how I got a lot of clients, and making long-form technical YouTube videos to help me convert leads into clients. So I would make a lot of lead magnets and other documents and checklists, and as a byproduct, I would use these for the videos, and these also help me in my marketing. Same kind of concept as you watching this video now, I would do that for landing pages. It took me a while to narrow these 3 things down. It probably sounds obvious, okay, you got all of your leads from ad funnels and cold email and you converted them with videos. Sounds easy enough, but everything sounds easy enough in retrospect, and when you're actually in it, it's not always that easy. But after I felt confident in these 3 things, I tried my best to hire and delegate pretty much everything that's not these 3 things, so I could apply the 80-20 rule and spend at least 80% of my day only focused on these things. And I felt very confident when I was doing this because I had experience with this rule in the past, and I knew that it would take my business to the next level. So before I really get into the daily schedule, it should be noted, when I say 8 figures, that's a lot of money, and it is, and especially a lot of money to a lot of people watching this video. And I think that most people think people who make a lot of money have these, yacht-going, exciting lives. But if you followed me around for a day, during this period, you would be bored out of your mind and would probably want to do something else. Really, as you're going to see, it involved me very, very consistently waking up at 5 a.m., doing a morning routine, and then working on the same 3 things over and over and over again from my apartment/condo in Canada. If you are lucky enough to follow me around, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you might come to the Muay Thai gym with me, but that's about it. The result and the money could be considered glamorous, but this period was definitely not glamorous in terms of the process. So let's get to it. The first thing that I always did was a morning routine, and I still do that to this day, and I've done that for years. I think there's a lot of really dumb advice out there about morning routines, that question them or say they're stupid, or should you even have a morning routine at all? And everyone can have their own opinion, but to me, there's no bigger idiots in the world than people who disparage a morning routine especially. And you'll see a lot of these people draw a false equivalence, for lack of a better word, of like, if you have a morning routine, it's 3 hours long and it's only focused on biohacking and meditation and affirmations and visualization. Like, that is just not true. You can have a morning routine that's 15 minutes, an hour, that's, focused on your health and exercising and doing all the stuff. If you're one of these people who actually thinks like that, I believe you've been psyoped, and it's very low IQ to think that you have to either have a 3-hour hoofy poofy morning routine versus no morning routine at all. There's everything can be on a spectrum in life. So let's get into it. One of the books and ideas that really had the biggest impact on me in my entire life is called The 5 a.m. Club by Ramban Sharma. You could probably guess what the book is about based on the title, but one phrase that really stuck with me because it's so true from my experience is waking up at 5 a.m. is the one habit that elevates all of your other habits. So think of it, if you wake up at 5 a.m., you have more time to exercise or to learn and read or to get more work done or to do whatever you want to do. I believe this is one of the most true things in the entire world. In the book, he teaches a 60-minute morning routine that I follow to this day called the 20-20-20. The first 20 minutes is called, is centered around moving, so exercise essentially. The second is centered around reflection, and the third is centered around learning. I love this morning routine, and I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. It's hard at first, but like anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And if you do it enough, it'll be almost impossible for you not to wake up at 5 a.m. I'm not a fan of staying up late or the concept of a night owl because, in my opinion, it's not the same thing as waking up early. Circadian rhythm, just nature. The sun goes up at a certain time, the sun goes down at a certain time. Just because humans have invented electricity and lights doesn't, change the fact, thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe millions of years of evolution. So here is the 20-20 formula from the book, if you are interested in that at all. But 5 to 5:20, move, exercise, sweat, reflect, journal, meditate, plan, pray, contemplate, and then grow, which basically I put learn earlier. I guess it's grow, and I just read for that part. The second thing I did, so let's just assume I woke up at 5 a.m. I leap out of bed, I make the bed, I brush my teeth, take some vitamins, and drink a liter of water. So this might seem minor, but when you're really in the thick of things and you're grinding and you're growing a business, a lot of people will neglect, to take care of themselves, their health. They'll get sick, gain a bunch of weight. I've done this before when I was in a previous period of grinding hard in my life, so I didn't want to do that again. Then after that, which took about, 1, 2, 3 minutes, I would automatically, or not automatically, but instantly go down to the ground floor of my building where there's a gym, and I would walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes. I know it's the 20-20-20 morning routine, but I did the 30-20-20. So I do this at a 3 mile an hour pace on a 12-degree incline, and I really like this because it's challenging. It causes a sweat and burns a meaningful amount of calories, but it's not so, difficult and burdensome that, I avoid doing it. I made that mistake when I first read this book. I'm going to go for a 20-minute run at 5 a.m. when you're half asleep. And, it's very easy to justify yourself because it's so difficult that you should just skip it and go back to bed. And, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of waking up early if you're going back to bed. When I'm done with that, I go to the second 20 minutes, which is reflect. I write down the goals, read my major definite purpose, which is my biggest goal, and then my motivation list. On my motivation list, I'm not going to go into it, but the good, the bad, and the ugly are all on there. All forms of motivation, evil, noble, anywhere in between. And I'll also journal for 5 to 10 minutes, no real agenda, whatever comes to mind. And I notice the difference in quality of days from when I do this versus don't do this really is different dramatically, and it's well worth it to do this each morning, in my opinion. The final thing I do is read in the learn or the grow category, and I think a lot of people, when they're first starting especially, substitute reading for actually doing work and just delay doing work and read more and more about it. So I agree, when you're at that phase, reading's probably not important, but if you are actually in business and you're actually already succeeding, I think reading is one of the best things that you could do in terms of just mental diet, learning new things that are relevant, etc. And then I would have breakfast. I'm not going to go into that. It's just a protein shake. And then I don't really eat again until 2 to 3 p.m. in the. So all of this will be done around 6:15 a.m. if I wake up at 5. It takes about an hour and 15, but it perfectly sets me up for the rest of the day. It could be argued that if I just went to work when I woke up, I'd have an extra hour done by this time, but I completely disagree with that, and I have tried both. Taking care of health by, walking on the treadmill wakes you up. Making it clear what I want from life in the day, and reading is worth way more than an hour of half asleep work in my experience. I don't really agree with that at all. So let's keep going. This is the second phase, and this is the momentum building routine that usually lasts about 30 minutes. So what does that even mean? For me, these are small tasks or things that have to get done every day that only take, 10 minutes or less, let's say. Some take even less than that. But by knocking these out in rapid succession, I ensure they get done and also build a bit of momentum for myself as I start to cross tasks off the to-do list, a little dopamine rush going here. So the first thing is I always review the plan for each day. It's a very detailed plan with no less than 2 pages, and I make this as part of the night routine the day before. The fool with a plan is better off than the genius without one. I love that quote, and planning is a big part of every single day in the life. The second thing is I update all clients. So you can really, in my opinion, dramatically improve the quality of your offer and service just by constantly communicating with the clients twice per day. You'll get a lot more wiggle room, a lot more forgiveness for bad results or bad services if you just communicate properly. And, obviously provide good services. That would be, priority number one. But when things aren't going right, if you're communicating properly, you can really, get fired less. The next thing I do is write a newsletter, which usually, centers around 400-ish words. So during this phase of this 11, 12 months of my life, I sent out a newsletter about e-com marketing that's really had an emphasis on landing pages and CRO, but, e-com in general. I did this every single day, Monday to Friday, and from the time I started doing this to, when it was eventually over, I did this, effectively 100% of days. Like if you round it up, it would be 100%. Over 99% of the time, no questions asked. And these were 200 to 1,000 words typically with no set length. It was just what I wanted to do that day. So a newsletter is one of the best ways to convert leads and prospects into clients, and I made sure I took advantage of that. When you have a set framework and template and you write enough newsletters, you can write these in 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 minutes and it still be very good quality. And maybe you should try that for yourself because there's really nothing better in my opinion. I also had a community, started as a Facebook group, eventually turned into a Discord, and then eventually turned into a Slack community. And it was full of, everybody who had any interest in CRO or landing pages, whether that's other people like agencies or providers. I didn't kick these people out or exclude them because they might buy my course. I don't know why I put coaching in here. I wasn't really doing coaching, but we'll just call course plus coaching, as well as e-com brands who would obviously be candidates for my services. I posted once per day in here. It only took a minute or 2 or maybe 3 at most. And it's different content than my newsletter because when you have multiple things like this that kind of serve the same purpose to convert, it's very tempting to just post the same thing in all of them. But if you do so, like my newsletter is the exact same as the community, there's no incentive or reason for them to read or join or be active in both. And that's not what I wanted. The next thing I did was write 5 tweets, and I cross-posted these tweets to LinkedIn and Instagram to make sure I was covered on all platforms. This is kind of not as big a deal as the community and newsletter because a different type of person uses Instagram versus LinkedIn versus Twitter. So you're not really hitting the same people over and over again in my experience. So what I did was I posted a bank of tweets as recurring posts, and eventually I built up 500 tweets in here. So a recurrent post, and it was just coming out at this time with Hype Fury. It was a new feature at the time where, you schedule the 500 tweets. Once the 500th one is posted, it'll just start from 0 or start from number 1 again. So you're just posting the same stuff over and over. So it's very good. You can kind of build a permanent content strategy and bank of content very quickly this way. Then I got dressed, got ready for work, the usual. So this really ended at about 6:45 a.m. and this would take about 30 minutes all in, and I would be ready to start the deep work by 7 a.m. I already got all of the very boring and repetitive but very, very important stuff. Like you could argue your newsletter, your group, your content, your plan. Like that's a big part of your day and your success. So it's not like this is just, little shit tasks anywhere. I took care of my health. I did some reading, and I did this exact stuff 95% of the days during this, 11 to 12 month period. I was very consistent, very locked in, no excuses, no deviations from the plan type thing. And the next is the deep work, 7 to 12. So 7 a.m. to noon, basically. And the secret to doing this is not very enlightening. It's blocking your calendar until noon every day. And this terrifies a lot of people, but once they try it, they find that absolutely nothing happens. Life goes on, except now that they have 5 hours of uninterrupted time to do the work, the deep work that actually moves the business forward instead of going here to here, being distracted and trying to fit stuff in. I actually have 2 computers and 2 phones that I use for this. One of my phones is just for close family, friends, girlfriends when I have a girlfriend. There are about 6 people at any given time that have the number. It has no apps or internet access. So the phone is for emergencies. And in the 8 years that I've been doing this, there have been precisely 0 emergencies during this deep work period. And I note that because this is the number one lame excuse I hear when I suggest people do this. Oh my God, what if there's an emergency? There's not. Has there ever been an emergency before? No? Okay. I also have a separate desktop, which is basically like the same purpose, no messaging apps or social media, and only certain websites are whitelisted and allowed. And I use I guess you'd call it a productivity VPN maybe? I don't know, app called Focus Me. So, only certain websites are allowed and any other website will just automatically shut down the browser. So I do my deep work from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. every day while the main phone and main desktop are turned off. It's one of the sickest things I've ever done, and sickest is in a good way in this case. And it's one of the reasons I'm able to pull this off. You don't have to do this. You could just focus. Like that would be an option too. But this is a good way to ensure that you do so. My personal productivity system takes like 4 main parts, and then the 5th is just repeat this 5 times a day. Number 1, I always wear headphones with the same song on repeat. A lot of the times I listen to Hans Zimmer or some orchestra type thing, or the binaural beats. It's kind of the first time I've said the word out loud, so hopefully that's how you say it and I don't get roasted. I get a timer, set it for 60 minutes, press go, and don't stop working until, the timer goes off. I've been doing this for a long, long time. It's getting really popular on, productivity videos at this point, but I've been doing this for a long time. I fill out a form after every single hour of work, which I'll show you after. And then after this hour is up, I'll take a 10-minute rest period, and that's just, you can't deep work for 5 straight hours. You need to, take a little break a bit. And then I do this exact thing 5 times per day. It's the simplest but the most effective productivity system or way of working I've ever tried. And I get more done, in one of these hours than most people do in a few days. And I do 30-ish of these focus sessions, 1 hour per week. So I'll always do the high-level tasks here that I talked about earlier, the ads, the cold emails, the videos, etc. And I try to devote as much as the 5 hours to these most important things as I can. So no matter what, the first hour I always devote to 2 things: making new ad creatives and writing new cold email scripts. Even if the ones that I'm currently using are working just perfectly, I still make these, and I need a constant flow of these, and I'm probably in the top 0.1% in the world at the ads, and maybe 5 to 10% at cold email scripts, but I need constant flow of these because they can stop working or being as effective on a whim with no notice, really. And this is something that's so important to my business that it can't be delegated. I was sending over 20K cold emails from 480 domains per day and spending up to $7,000 per day in ads at my peak. So it's very important to the business. Even if you get an ad creative that's 5% better, that's like essentially adding $350 per day in free ad spend in terms of the value you get if you 5% of 7,000, or even if you get a 10% more responses from cold emails. If you're getting, 1 in every 500 is a positive response, and you get 10% better. That becomes 1 in every 450. When you're sending 20K a day, that can really add up. The second hour is always videos for me. Most of them were for Kajabi, for training, for like course, for my client education, and a lot of them were also unlisted on YouTube. Some were public. They didn't get very many views, but I found that even if the videos don't get that many views, they do such a good job of converting people who already know about you from the 7K a day in ad spend, the 20K per day cold emails, the content, etc., that making 1 to 3 videos per day is one of the most efficient uses of time there is. And from hours 3 to 5, like, I'd still be working on these 3 things specifically, but it's just that hours 1 and 2 were specific to, always making sure I got the creative scripts and videos made. I'd still be working on these 3 things in hours 3 to 5, but, there's other things that have to do with, ads that are not the creatives, Your email flow, your welcome flow impacts it as well. Your landing page and doing landing page tests impacts it. Improving the offer is another way to impact the ads. Or if the offers like kind of getting saturated, petering out a little, still got to come up with a new offer. You can't just let your business go to zero, right? The same goes for cold email. The same goes for videos. I spent a lot of time learning and researching about cold email in, this period, because if you're not getting the results you want at something, it's probably a sign that you don't know something or lack the skills, not that it doesn't work. And I know, especially for the first few months when I started cold email from scratch, I was not getting the results that I wanted. So I was spending a lot of time watching videos, buying courses and coaching programs and stuff, and practicing in these hours. So hours 4, 5, the same. Here's the form that I referenced earlier. So at the end of every hour, I filled out a form essentially proving what I did. So it can be fun to look back when you have like a year's worth of forms, but it's also, and the main purpose is for accountability. The notifications that I submitted this form were sent to my entire team during this period, and that proves to them that I'm doing the same thing that I'm asking of them, which I'll get to in a minute. Nothing worse than do as I say, not as I do types, and no one's going to respect you if you really harp on something such as this form, but you don't do it yourself. And then I really improved the productivity of the whole company by also making my employees do that for the same reason, as well as to keep an eye on them and what they're doing. When people are working remote, especially overseas, people take advantage of you quite a bit. And to go into the game and not realize this that's foolish. This prevents that to varying degrees. When they get hired, they're told if they don't fill out this form 5 times per day in detail, they're not going to work here very long. This is one of the best hacks for managing and motivating employees that I've come across. So in the Slack channel, every time, this is not an example of, back then, this is the current 1 in 1,000x leads, but when someone filled out their form, it notifies every single person in the Slack that they filled out their form. For the rest of the day, like 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. type thing, after my morning routine, after my momentum building tasks, after my deep work, is the rest of the day. After the 5 hours were complete, the rest of the day was usually quite chaotic, doing whatever needs to be done. It's probably what you'd expect in terms of tasks for the rest of the day. I was still involved in sales, more than I should have been at this time. So sales calls was 90% of my remaining time. So our company was booking about 600 meetings per month through our ads, through our cold emails, partnerships, content, you name it. Our marketing funnel was pretty awesome, and I was involved in a lot of these because I never really built a sales team properly before this and didn't do a very good job of it. So we had a couple good salespeople and then, fired a lot of them. So I was still very much involved in this when I probably shouldn't have been. So I took 5 to 10 meetings per day, during this period. There's about 5 hours in this period. There's a lot of times where I had 30-minute meetings back to back for 5 hours straight. It's not fun, but that was my reality. There's no worse type of people that I dislike more, and I dislike them because it's just the worst decision in the world. You say, I'm going to turn the marketing down, or I have enough clients so I don't need more leads. That is the devil talking. Trust me, that's the devil sitting on your shoulder and whispering, bad things to do in your ears. And this is me on the other shoulder, telling you not to ever think that way. I need to turn down the marketing. I have enough clients is one of the absolute worst things you could ever think. And that's This is the number one reason for failure of a lot of previously successful businesses, turning down the lead gen, because it's always a lag period. And if you turn it down 90 days from now, you're screwed. So if I chose to think this way, like I'm taking 5 meetings per day conservatively, 20 business days in a month conservatively for 3 months, that's 300 calls. If I simply chose to not take these calls and I had a really strong close rate, 50%-ish or more, that is 150 sales on an average of $3,300 each. Because some people bought one landing page for $2,500, some people bought 3 for $5,000. It was kind of an average of $3,300 I worked out in preparation for a different video. And then about 8% of these would convert into an upsell for 8 to 15K a month. Like, very important. So 495,000 in sales, like potential, with the closes from just the one-time landing pages, with the potential of an extra 12 clients paying 8 to 15K a month, all in just a 3-month time period. And this is an example to show you why, like, if I didn't take these calls, like, it's $1 million plus in 3 months that, our company's not getting. Do you think your employees would be happy with you, or your family would be happy with you if you just said, oh, I don't need to make this $1 million? No. And so, yes, I took an insane amount of sales calls. Client meetings, like, this is something that I delegated, but there's the odd times with usually very, very, very large or important clients, or, very unhappy clients if we weren't doing our job properly, that I went on client meetings, but we had people for this, like, wasn't really involved. So this would be 2% of the remaining time. Team meetings, hiring, training, managing is another, other things that I delegated. I had some great recruiters, but there's some times where you just, can't avoid getting on the calls, and there were certainly meetings I went to. And then, miscellaneous tasks, 5%, always random things. Who knows? I could list a million different things here. After work, about 5 p.m. to about 8 p.m., exercise, hobby, family and friends, etc. Like I said, there's not one time that I didn't do something that I wanted to do just because I was working. So I don't really understand the whining about work-life balance. You can have it all despite what people tell you, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I usually go to the gym 4 to 5 days per week, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Still do this, pretty standard. Train Muay Thai, 3 times per week, 1 to 2 hours per time, depending on how I'm feeling, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Go out with friends, family, girlfriends, etc. I don't know what you think of me from this, video so far, but I do have a very normal and good, very standard social life. It's not like I'm a recluse or anything. And you can have it all. Don't believe anyone who tells you otherwise. And the night routine is where I set myself up. So I automatically shut down my computer at 7:30 p.m. using the task scheduler function, because if I didn't, I would just keep working and never get to bed on time. Waking up at 5 a.m. is not going to work if you go to bed at midnight. So, very important to get to bed at reasonable time. Phone off and away at 8 p.m. Similar thing, get rid of that blue light and wind down for the day. Same thing I did in the morning routine, the goals, the major definite purpose, and the motivation list. Did this again at night. Review progress from the day. What did I do today? Did I actually do what my plan was? And I was really committed to this, like crazy committed to it. And the answer 99.9% of the time was yes. I held myself to the standard. I'm getting every single thing done with never making any excuses. I was really locked in at this time. I miss it. I planned the next day for myself plus key employees. So, the 2 pages I referenced earlier, I'd always plan that out, whether that's on a piece of paper or in Microsoft To-Do app. And then I would plan out, the day for some of my key employees, which is like 2 to 3 people. It sounds more in depth than it was. And always try to get to bed by 9 p.m. because, like I said, if you're going to bed at midnight or 1 a.m. and you're waking up at 5, you're going to die. So I failed to get to bed probably 50% of the time in this period at 9 p.m., but I tried by 10 p.m. for sure. It's very easy if you go to bed at 12 to justify yourself, well, I better turn off the alarms because I'm only getting 5 hours of sleep. Remove the excuses for yourself. So here is where, if you've been watching it up to this point and you think, could this work for me? And the answer is yes, but here's where it will go wrong and won't work for you. The number one reason it won't work is if you don't block time. Like I said with the deep work, this is not going to be possible for you. You can't get 5 hours of deep work done if your focus is being pulled in all directions all day. So the voice that tells you in your head that it's not possible to do this, it's just a cope, self-limiting belief, not reality. I can assure you nothing will really happen if you block the first 5 hours of the day from 7 to noon. It's almost pathetic how little difference this makes in the day-to-day of your business, and really shows you like stuff doesn't really matter that much. Not delegating is the second reason, and there's two kind of ways that you don't delegate. You just, you don't delegate at all, or you have no one to delegate to. And both of these things will kind of torpedo any chance of you having to work like me. The first one is usually some sort of bullshit emotional thing. No one can do it like me or as good as me, so I might as well not even do it. The second is the function like you don't hire anyone or you don't hire fast enough, and usually because you're trying to take too much money out of your business instead of reinvesting ahead of time. The third is, you're not identifying the proper tasks and, the three things that are 90% of the success. So you're either not doing this at all because you don't believe in it, or you've identified the wrong things and you're wasting a lot of time. The fourth thing is probably going to be the biggest reason, is that 99% of people are quite simply going to vastly overestimate the amount of deep work they do. Kind of the inverse of them counting calories, where most people vastly underestimate how many calories they eat. This is the opposite, and I've worked with enough people to know it. What people will claim is 5 to 10 hours of work, in my experience, watching over their shoulder, is usually like 15 to 30 minutes, especially if you hold it to like a strict standard on what's deep work and what's not. So this is where the 3 times 90% thing, the timer, and the form come in handy. And waking up too late is the final thing. This is the end of the presentation in the video. Like, all is going to be irrelevant here if you don't wake up early enough. If you're waking up at 9 a.m. or 12 p.m., like, no chance of this working for you. This is the kind of schedule that won't work if you're a night owl, just because of the way that business hours exist. That's kind of what the night owls types typically willfully ignore, in my opinion, is that the standard business hours are 9 to 5. And if you're staying up till 4 a.m. and working there and you're waking up at noon, like, you are not going to be doing deep work. You're going to be scrambling to do something during the day, and if you don't, you're not going to ever get on a call with anybody in normal business hours. You're not going to go anywhere. So you don't necessarily have to wake up at 5 a.m., but anything later than 6, maybe 7, and this is not going to work. And if you can't do it and you don't want it bad enough, that's fine. You're just never going to be able to work in this fashion. So that's the end of the video. I hope it was useful, and I'll see you in the next one.